G'day, Tom. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you going?
I'm good, thanks, Grant. It's good to meet you. We've been chatting online every now and again, so it's good to speak to you in person.
Yeah, no, it's great to catch up with you, Tom. You're someone I've wanted to talk to for a little while, and I know we've had to shuffle around schedules and everything to get to this point. Why don't you start with what photography is to you? Just tell us a bit about how you got started and why you love it so much.
Okay, so a little bit about me and how I got into photography. So, always been around photography, always been around cameras. My dad is a wildlife photographer, actually.
Okay.
He used to love shooting film. I still remember him getting his Canon T90, which was one of the first autofocus film cameras, and
Yeah.
he was amazed by it. And I still have that vivid memory of him bringing that home. I've always been around cameras, but then I dabbled back in the early digital world. I did have a film SLR, I had a hand-me-down, I think it was. And then early 2000s, the digital camera revolution was coming along nicely. I remember
Hmm.
having a very exciting 2 megapixel Kodak weather sealed camera, which was it was huge, like a brick. It was literally
Yeah.
like a brick and 2 megapixels. It was had a tiny little zoom. So I remember having that back in the early days. And then I went through some bridge cameras and then eventually landed on one of the original Canon DSLRs.
Okay.
My one was the 350D. I think they've also called it the Rebel as well over
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
past. Entry level DSLR. And I had that for a few years and I tinkered with it. And then eventually it just ended up getting a little bit mothballed. It didn't come out. Mobile phones were getting better and better. And
Yep.
just,
Yep.
just sat in a cupboard for a while. Through a series of life events, I ended up moving to the south coast of the UK, to Bournemouth, and really settled in here quickly. I'm actually a Dorset boy originally, so Dorset in the UK. I'm actually a Dorset boy originally, and I'd moved away for various reasons. But I ended up back in Dorset, in Bournemouth. And when I got that back to the coast, I really started enjoying being on the coast and being out and about a lot more again.
Sure.
It's such a beautiful area. I then started cycling to work. I worked in Bournemouth and I lived in Bournemouth, and I was enjoying my cycling to work, and I was cycling every single morning. And so I was seeing the weather conditions on the coast every single morning.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's what really clicked for me. Being able to see how much the weather conditions changed the scenery. It really just it infused me. So I
Mm.
started taking more and more pictures. And originally I was using a mobile phone, then I started using a GoPro. And I thought, I need to almost stop cycling so much and doing more photography. So I actually ended up, and I got an injury as well. So I ended up not cycling as much. So when I got this injury, I thought this is a really good opportunity to spend some more time on the camera.
Sure.
I started looking around and I needed something small and light and compact, but also weather sealed or at least capable of being relatively robust on the coast. And I started looking around the Olympus range because it was small micro four thirds,
Yep.
super lightweight, tiny little lenses, and that could just be shoved in my backpack whilst I was cycling. Brilliant. Bought myself one of those, and all of a sudden, everything really clicked. I all of a sudden I was cycling almost became secondary, and I wanted to be behind the camera, and I
Yeah.
wanted to go to more and more locations, and I wanted to see those locations in different conditions. And all of a sudden, I got the major landscape photography bug. Yeah, I'm very lucky. I live in a beautiful location, Dorset, on the south coast of the UK. We have so many different things, and I'm sure we'll talk about lots of those different areas over the time together here today. But everything just came together, and all of a sudden, I was a landscape photographer. That was
Mm.
it. I used to be a cycling photographer, and now all of a sudden, I was a photographer that also did a bit of cycling,
So,
and that was what happened. And yeah, I haven't looked back. That was like in 2017, 2018.
yeah. Yeah. Cool. Talking about where you live, how has that influenced? Obviously, it's going to influence the kind of things that you shoot. You're on the coast, so coastal scenes are going to be fairly de rigueur, but there's plenty of other places around the south of England that you can shoot, bar the coast. But also, I guess I'm interested in the locations you go to, the locations you shoot, does that influence the way you shoot, or do you decide the way that you shoot influences where you go? And I'm just interested in how people.
What a great question. I think it is a little bit of both. When I started getting into more serious landscape photography, I would say that I was very keen to try out lots of different techniques very quickly. You know, doing the long exposures, shooting into the sun, shooting starbursts, and all of the things that landscape photographers can utilize. So when I started out, I was very much, let's try everything. You know, let's do a 10 stop. Let's do a 5-minute exposure. Let's do a 1 second exposure. Let's do a half-second exposure. Let's do a 5 second. Let's look at all the different things look at all the different results that these produce. And I suppose to start with, I really just was looking for those classic, beautiful locations and going there. And in my head, I was just trying to try lots of different techniques at individual locations just to see the difference, the results that produce. But I must say, over time, it's certainly changed a bit, and it's now become, I go to a location generally with a shot in mind. Maybe not the perfect. I don't know exactly what I'm going to come away with. Of course, that's the joy of landscape photography, isn't it? You never know what you're going to get.
You're going to end up
with. Me and a good friend of mine, we have a saying, in landscape photography might be good, might be a complete load of pile of other stuff, because that is landscape photography. We can go out, we can walk miles and enjoy ourselves and have a good old natter, but then we can come away with nothing because the weather was just not right for the location.
The clouds of the sea or the sun didn't play ball.
Exactly. That's the fun of the chase, though, isn't it? That's part of it.
That's why you keep going to the same location, because I had this in mind and I wanted that shot, but I didn't quite get it, so I got to go back.
100%, yeah. And I think we'll probably talk about it in a bit more depth later, but one of my favourite locations in the area here, to me, in Dorset, is Corfe Castle. It's a pretty well-known location, pretty much worldwide, just because of this. It's an old ruin on top of a hill, which seems to attract mist and fog at the right times of the year. And because of that, I go back over again. And I can't not go back. If I see a forecast which even hints at a bit of mist, I'm already trying to work out, how can I make sure I get there at that time? I don't want to miss that, because it could be slightly different mist than it was last time. It could be a bit lower, a bit higher, that the sun will be slightly different.
And you can always take it from a different angle.
Exactly, different angles, different lenses. One of the things that I've certainly changed over time, I was your classic landscaper to start with. Let's go wide. Let's go really wide. Let's shoot wide, because you can get so much of the scene. It's exciting. And I must say, over time, I hope I utilize everything in my kit bag. I shoot wide, but I also shoot narrow as well. I will stick a zoom lens, stick a telephoto on, and zoom right in and grab some details and remove some of the clutter. And I think that's another joy of it. You're not limited. To be fair, in most photography genres, you shouldn't be limited, because that's the whole point of it. You're supposed to be able to express yourself and express the difference that you bring to a genre. But I do feel with landscape, you've got so much scope, from times of the day to seascapes, classic countryside, and even going into the urban stuff as well. There's just so much scope. And then switching it up with different lenses and different techniques. It's so exciting. There's always something
in there. There's so many.
I love a little bit of the nighttime stuff as well, and it is great fun. It's absolutely great fun.
So do you think, you mentioned that you do a bit of planning, do you think it's important for you to have projects in your mind to work on, or goals that you're aiming for? It might be a particular shot, or it might be to complete a particular series. I've noticed it's not just yourself, there's quite a few, particularly in the UK and Europe and also America, people that will go to almost exactly the same spot, try and find almost exactly where they put the tripod, and get that same tree or that same hill or that same structure or whatever in different seasons, which is something in Australia, unless you live near the snowy mountains, you don't get that much option to do. So it's almost always sunny, and the trees don't lose their leaves.
Where I am in the UK, we do only really have two seasons. It feels like we have the sunny season and the wet season. I would love to say that we have
the southern parts of the UK.
Yeah.
A little bit more temperate, I guess, than the north.
Exactly. And Dorset in particular, I've got to say, because we've only got one coast. If you go down to Cornwall and Devon, a bit further to the west, they have two coasts, and their weather is a little bit more wild, actually.
Yeah.
Dorset's actually pretty calm over. I'm sure I read at some point it was the driest of all the counties in.
Wow, okay. I didn't know that.
Just because I think just the way that we sit overall, we get lots of drizzle, but we don't get much rain. You know, we don't get a lot of heavy, prolonged rain, apart from over the past month, but we won't go there. So I suppose overall, I'm my projects, I think they've started to evolve a little bit. I was very much I would just go out on a weekend just to enjoy myself as much as anything. I should add, I'm not a full-time photographer. Sure. I am a semi-professional photographer. I have a full-time job, and that does use up a lot of my time. I also have a family with two children. One of my children has got a long-term medical condition. So all of these things, I only have a certain amount of time I can put to photography.
Get it, yeah.
And I would love to make that transition, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. And I know that, and I accept that. And I think having that acceptance helps me really focus on what's important. And what's important to me is growing me and my photography. That's what's really important. So like I said, to start with, I was all about the tech, the techniques, all about learning the craft, learning the trade. Now I'm starting to enjoy the creative elements a bit more, and thinking about, like you said, thinking about projects. I'm going to run my first small exhibition this year. I've never run an exhibition before, but it's just that project I've been working towards. I've also just invested in my own printing equipment, a good quality home printer, a good quality paper, and actually learning that craft as well, and taking it from the screen to the actual final image that's printed. That's something I'm really enjoying.
I've heard that described as learning photography all over again.
Absolutely. I know, just the screens that I'm looking at right now, talking to you, learning to calibrate the screens properly. And when I actually did it, it was like, wow, yeah, they were really oversaturated and far too bright and all the rest of it. And now I can press print within a very small margin of error. I know what I'm going to get on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Although now I've learned that the paper makes so much difference. You get different color temperatures on the papers and all the rest of it. So it's all, like you say, it is about almost learning it all over again in a different way. It's very exciting, and I think I needed that. I needed that little bit of something extra. When I decided to do an exhibition, I thought, you know what? I'm going to print my own stuff for my exhibition. I'm going to do the whole thing. It's going to be me. This is it now. I'm not going to rely on anybody else. I'm going to take my photos, I'm going to print them out, I'm going to put them on in my frames, bought frames admittedly, but I'm going to mount them myself, and then I'm going to set up the exhibition. It's only small. It's only, I think it's the photos. So it's only a very small little exhibition, but just doing that, I think, is really exciting.
And the thing is, that first step takes you on to whatever the next step is going to be.
Absolutely. I know I've been very lucky. So at the beginning, I mentioned that my first sort of foray back into photography was with an Olympus camera. And very quickly, I ended up speaking to Olympus, and I was very lucky in the case. Don't get me wrong, I know that was luck. That was pure luck. Right place, right time, right camera. They wanted to speak to somebody in the UK that was doing landscape photography with their cameras. And they happened to they actually noticed a couple of my astro shots, which is what drew me to, because I was doing astro with a micro four thirds camera. And they were like, oh, hold on.
Kind of camera.
Not well known.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, not well known. They were like, oh, wow, this guy's doing something. So they contacted me and we had a chat. And all of a sudden, before I knew it, I was doing work with them, which was just fantastic.
Nice.
It opened so many doors. And my relationship with Olympus cameras no longer exist. They're now OM system. They sold off their the commercial camera arm. Olympus do actually still have an imaging arm, but it's only medical imaging that they do now. They sold off the commercial, the photography side of it, and set up a new company, OM System. But I've stayed with them. They're releasing new cameras, new lenses all the time, and like I say, the opportunities that they've given me, I'm forever grateful for.
Yeah,
again, we can have a chat about a couple of those, because last year I went to Iceland with them, and that was just mind blowing. That was just utterly mind blowing. And previously, back in 2019, so I'd only been doing this a year and a half at that point, really. I was given their latest camera and sent to Madeira with their latest camera. For somebody that's only been doing photography for a year and a half, to be given that opportunity, no wrong. It wasn't like all like super duper and fancy hotels and all that. No. It was, here's a little bit of money, here's a new camera, go off and have an adventure. That was it. But to a new photographer, that's an amazing opportunity.
Absolutely.
And like I say, all that did was just enthuse me even more and say to me, just go and do some more, do more. And that's what I've tried to do. It's been a funny old time, let's be honest. It has been a funny old time. The whole past 2 or 3 years have just been bonkers. The photography hasn't stopped. That's the main thing. Photography hasn't stopped.
Excellent. In terms of when you started to recognise photography for yourself as an art form, as opposed to when you were biking around and taking shots and going, okay, that looks nice, which is where everyone starts. That's a nice scene. I'd like to capture it. I'd like to keep that as a memory. Where did it start to transition to, I'd really like to create art out of this?
I think it was around, it's a tricky one, because like I say, I started off, it's almost like I've done a 3-step stage for me, because I definitely went with, oh yeah, there's a pretty thing, I want to take a picture of it. So absolutely started there, of course, like you say.
Yeah, everyone starts that way.
Yeah. Then I very much went technical, because like I said, this isn't a full-time job for me. My full-time job is IT. Yeah. And under the hood, I'm a techie. Yeah. There's no two ways about it. Yeah. Under the hood, I'm a techie. I love my tech. You name it, I've probably had that piece of tech at some point, but even if I don't have it now, I've probably had it at some point. So I went very technical, and it was all about looking at the technical side of photography, thinking about hyperfocal distances and all of that sort of stuff that was, which most people would go, oh, that's not very artistic.
Point the camera at it.
Yeah, exactly. But even so, I very much took I know people that have gone into photography and have got an eye for photography. I look at their shots and I go, that's awesome. That's amazing. Yeah. And when I speak to them, they're like, yeah, I just turned up and I pointed it over there and took that picture. And it's like, oh, wow, really? You've got an eye for it then. And you are amazing. Yeah. I don't have that. Okay. I don't think. I have to work for it. And that's why, I suppose, getting to the art elements, getting to that, the artistic side of photography has taken me longer than I think it takes some people. Because of my technology background, I look at everything and I overanalyze things so much. I'm an overanalyzer because I'm techie. I want to see the data. I want to know the data. I want to understand this picture from the technology side. Maybe if I was getting into this, all those years ago with film, maybe I wouldn't have even got into it. And maybe that's why I did take a break. And maybe it took so long that I needed to have a high quality editing piece of software where I could look at all the data behind it and look at how many stops I'm adjusting it and all the rest of it. Maybe it took me that long before I could enjoy it. So it has taken me a long time. And I honestly believe in the past maybe year or so that I've really started, maybe 18 months, I've really started settling into photography for the end product as a piece of art, or as a final image. Before that, I enjoyed my photography. I loved my photography for the adventure and for the technical side. Now, I'm getting possibly even more critical than ever, because the reason is, although I can take a good quality photo, if it doesn't hit the nail on the head from an art point of view now, from a good piece of art, then I'm becoming less and less interested in it. And I can definitely see that in my photography.
Yeah.
Whereas 2 years ago, a good quality scene, which was technically perfect, I would have been really happy with that.
Yeah.
Now, if the light's slightly wrong, it goes in the bin, and it really is. So it's definitely, I'm definitely in a transitional phase at the moment.
Yeah, interesting.
Which is a real challenge, actually, because I'm really struggling to produce lots of images I like. 3 years ago, I was producing a lot more images than I liked. Well, I liked at that point, and I look back at them and go, "What a load of garbage." And I think we're all that sort of way.
Yeah, we're all very critical of our early work.
Absolutely,
gem that you pick out and go, "Oh, yeah, that's okay."
Yeah.
But mostly you look at it and go, "Yeah, what was I thinking?"
Exactly. I have maybe about 6 to 10 shots from my early years, shall we say, that I reuse regularly in websites and publications when I do articles and things, because I love them and I still love them and they mean a lot to me.
Yeah.
And they're good shots, but they're good shots by a bit of luck, I think, now. Yeah. Now, when I look back at them and think, that was a really good shot. That was really lucky, because I didn't know what I was doing back then. So I suppose it just proves that anybody with a vague knowledge can get a good shot if you get
absolutely
and a bit of luck. But now, I'm definitely seeing that transition moving towards the art side, and thinking about this exhibition I want to do. I know I'm putting so much thought into how I want it laid out, thinking about the sections, thinking about how it will transition from one picture to another, and those sorts of things, because it will literally be a wavy wall, shall we say.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about landscape portrait, and I'm thinking, actually, do I want them all portrait, or do I want them all landscape orientation? Oh no, I don't want that. And should I have one portrait, one landscape, one portrait, one landscape? It's all of these things that are going around my head at the moment.
It's interesting. I think a lot of people go through that process whether it's putting stuff into your portfolio and how you arrange that and how you put your website together, or putting stuff into a book. I've never done an exhibition personally, but I know that feeling. Do I alternate the format on the pages? Do I have one hero image on page left or page right, and then 2 or 3 on the other one, or is it 2, or is it 4? What? And should they all be landscape and all that sort of thing? And just working out how that flow should work, so that when you're flipping the pages, it's aesthetically pleasing. And doing that for an exhibition, I'd imagine, is pretty much the same sort of process.
Absolutely, but I think photography as art landscape photography as art, I should have, because it's quite a journey. It's quite a complex beast as well. I know some really good portrait photographers. Really, there's obviously the commercial portrait photographers that take pictures for a commercial reason. Then that's fine. But I know a few that are very artistic with their portraiture. When you speak to them, the level of planning that goes into their work is phenomenal. All the lighting, all the props, the model that's doing the right thing, wearing the costume
model, the shape of the arms and the legs, and
exactly.
All
that. But they almost are going, fundamentally, at the end of the day, if they want to, they can control every single element of that scene.
Unless they're doing an outdoor natural light scene.
Absolutely.
And if they're doing they just pick a day.
Exactly. But one of the things for landscape photography, outdoor photography in general, is it's that unknown. It is the natural world. It's the conditions. It's the weather. It's the light. That just brings something different to it, and it hits different. And when you get something good, the feeling of satisfaction is, for me, it feels it's different level, isn't it? Because
absolutely,
that I still look back at a couple of videos I took, of me, Instagram stories, and things like that, when I'm out on a shoot, and the sky is just bright red. And I hear in my voice the excitement of seeing that with my eyes, and then the excitement of trying to capture that and capture it in a way that doesn't look stupid. Because that's a real challenge with some of those big bright sunrises, isn't it? Because sometimes you could just look at those and go, nah, it's real. And you tell people, no, it really was like that.
That's it. Yeah.
And it's being outside, being in the elements, and then trying to capture it it's next level enjoyment.
Absolutely. And I think, as you said, you've captured exactly why you got into it and why you do it in a really succinct manner there. In terms of your style and how that's developing, as you said, towards the artistic, how would you describe your style to somebody that hadn't seen your work? This being a podcast, some people will see some of your work in the promos, but during the podcast, they're probably not going to see a lot of it.
No. So how would I describe my work? So I describe myself as an outdoor photographer, but I do cover 4 main genres, sort of sub-genres, if you will. So classic landscape, seascape, astro, and drone. Yep. So drone is my most recent sort of foray, as I think it's for a lot of landscape photographers. They shoot for the camera first and then get into the droning after. So that's still what's the right word? A fledgling interest of me.
Okay.
I enjoy it a lot, but I really enjoy flying my drone and taking images, but I enjoy capturing video a bit more on the drone actually than the photography. I still find that 9 out of 10 times I go back to my camera photos. I love capturing the footage with the drone, but the photos back to the camera.
Yeah.
So landscape, seascape, and astro, I suppose, are the 3 genres. I'm definitely, I would say, seascape first. I live on the coast. I love being by the sea. And my seascape, I would say, I'm a sunrise and sunset photographer. I'm not a daytime photographer, as most of us are. We love that early light. But I'm very much that first 20 minutes before the sunrise. That's when it hits the sweet spot. Sure. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I think the majority, I would say 90% of my photos are taken in the half an hour, which is 20 minutes before sunrise and 10 minutes after sunrise. And I would say 90% of my photos are probably taken at that point. And predominantly that's at sunrise. I enjoy sunrises so much more. Something about the solitude you get with a sunrise.
Yeah.
Sunsets, I love a sunset, don't get me wrong. It's a beautiful time of the day, but there's something about sunrise because there's so few people around generally. It just feels quiet and peaceful and calm. And my style of photography is generally me walking somewhere in the morning, be that local beach or trekking out to a location on the Jurassic Coast somewhere, and then looking for some beautiful reds, pinks, blues, golden light, and enjoying the scene. I am definitely moving towards the tighter crops on my photography now as well.
Yep.
So whereas historically I would say I did love that wider shot, and I still shoot an awful lot with wider lenses, but I'm really starting to enjoy a slightly tighter crop on the scene, just to maximize a single point, a single subject in that scene, with everything else around it. And that is definitely a way I'm moving, I think. So I do. Coastal photography, though, is just there's something about it. It's really hard to describe. And when people come and visit, or I want to run a workshop or take somebody out to the coast, and when I see their enjoyment of walking around on the coast and seeing, they can point their camera at a rock and all of a sudden they've got a beautiful scene. There's the seas flowing around it in different ways. And then when you start tweaking the shutter speed, to allow you to see that bit of flow and a bit of motion of the sea, that's when people go, wow, this is so addictive.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite things about it is
I was going to say, I know you like being out on the coast as well.
Yeah, you can point it at a rock and as long as there's a bit of water movement, a bit of foam, you're set. You can pretty much make any kind of shot you like.
But then that's the joy of it, isn't it? Because then you start hunting for a nice looking rock.
Yes.
And then you start
what's
looking
interesting about that rock as opposed to the rock next to it.
Absolutely. And then you start thinking, oh, can I get 3 rocks in a row? Because 3 is a nice number. Can I get these 3 together? Oh, look, there's 3 there. Those 3 rocks. Yeah,
exactly.
And one thing I would say is really interesting for me is I've learned so much more about the weather, landscape photographer now, even just, but not just the weather, sunrises and moonrises, understanding sun positions as well.
Yeah.
I had no concept of as a non-photographer, you think about the winter sun and it being a bit low in the sky. But what you don't fully appreciate is the position in the landscape of the sun is completely different in the summer as is in the winter. The movement of the sun in where I am is amazing, because it actually makes sunrises and sunsets on the coast, in my bit of the coast, on the south coast of England, it makes it really boring and dull in the summer because the sun's too far over the land. And then all of a sudden, as the winter months come, so the October to March, autumn, winter, that's UK autumn, winter, obviously, our autumn, winter, all of a sudden the sun's in so much of a better position. And the shots you get are just so much better because the sun's in the right place and the light hits the rocks in different ways, which you just don't get in the summer.
That's the wonder of it all, being able to track that through the year and understand, okay, if I stand here, I know what I'm going to get.
Yeah. And if you stand here at this time of the year, you know what you're going to get. Yeah,
that's absolutely it. Yeah. What does success look like for you in your photography?
Somebody says it looks all right. I suppose I'm always surprised by the number of people that like my photography. Okay. And I'm sure an awful lot of photographers feel this way. I still to this day have massive imposter syndrome. Continually, I look at other people's work and think that's amazing, and I look at my work and go, it's nowhere near as good. It's poor in comparison. And then somebody says, actually, no, that's a good shot. And I look at some of them and I go, that's all right. That I never think it's that good. And so I suppose success. What is success? I don't think I'll ever get there. If I'm being brutal, I don't think I'll ever be happy. And it's a sorry state of affairs. I'm one of those people that I don't think I'll ever be happy with what I produce or what I can do. I will always want more. That's. I almost wish I wasn't like that sometimes. I wish I could just be content, but I'm not. And maybe that's what drives me, isn't it? And drives many of us. We always want a little bit more. So ultimately, I want people to like my work. I don't mean clicking like on Instagram. The biggest compliment is when a friend comes around to the house and sees one of my pictures on a wall and goes, oh, that's really nice. That is the biggest compliment.
Yeah.
The hundreds of likes, the thousands of likes on Instagram. No, it's lovely, but having a mate come around and go, that looks nice, mate. Well, that is the biggest compliment to me. That's the biggest. When it's somebody that isn't looking for nice work and then all of a sudden sees one of yours and recognizes it's a nice piece of work, that's a real compliment.
Really nice. You talked a little bit about trying to juggle and balance your time. What techniques do you use to try and balance your full-time work, your family life, and your photography? Obviously, getting up at stupid o'clock and going out for sunrise is one way of doing it.
And that's pretty much what I do. During the whole pandemic thing, we got a dog like many other people did in the world, I think. Yep. And that has actually even got me out even more regularly for sunrise now, because even if I'm not going out shooting, I'm going out dog walking on the beach. Don't get me wrong. Even I draw the line sometimes and go, it's grim out there, I'm not going anywhere. But most mornings I'm out there with the dog on the beach, and generally I haven't got a backpack with me. I've got a camera on a sling around my neck, across my body, and I'm walking the dog. And if I see something, or if the sunrise kicks in and I get a good shot, then I'm super happy. And if it doesn't, I go. So during the week, I've got to say, I do have a full-time job. It can be quite stressful at times. I work in education. I work for a university. I run an IT department for a university. So there's 100 odd people asking me for what they should do. There's a lot going on in my work life. So I don't take huge amounts of time off from work. I generally do more early mornings and weekends. And it's very rare at a weekend that I'm not out at least once. Some weekends, if it really lands right, certainly in the summer, I can often be out twice because I can get up super early, go for a shoot, stop at a drive-through on the way home for a breakfast, and still get home before my family are up. Because in the summer, it's that early. It's great. Then I can have a whole day with the family as well.
That's it.
So there is a lot of balancing, and sometimes, every now and again, fairly regularly, I will look at a sunset and go, I've missed a good one. And I've missed a good one because I've got other commitments. And
you've got other things.
That's it.
A higher priority.
And it is not my full-time job. It is a delightful, wonderful side hustle. And I love it to pieces. And I try to enjoy it still. I talk about being imposter syndrome and never being happy with my work and everything. Okay, that's fair enough. But one thing I always enjoy, going out with the camera, walking somewhere, ideally with at least a mate of some description as well, and having a chat and just enjoying the moment. Even if I do walk away without having a picture at the end because of being overcritical or the light was a bit wrong or whatever, I've had a good time and I've chilled out a bit. And I do use it for the actual process of taking a picture, going somewhere, finding a composition, having a walk, being out in nature. And that I find very therapeutic overall. Got to say. And every now and again you get a really crappy shoot and you think, really needed a good one today. Everyone gets that. But 9 out of 10 times I get home and I go, I had a good walk. And it's really important, actually, that we should talk about that a little bit, because I know a lot of photographers that will gladly go out on their own, take pictures on their own, and they don't want anybody near them. I actually enjoy a bit of social interaction whilst I'm out shooting. Don't get me wrong, I don't like big groups of people, of course I don't. That just doesn't work. You're tripping over each other and all the rest of it. Yeah. Every year, I'm sure you've seen the shot. Every year, at Durdle Door on the South Coast UK, we get the sunburst coming through
through the arch. Yeah.
The sun comes up through the arch of Durdle Door, and if you go there on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or a Monday during that period, and the conditions are good, you can guarantee 20 plus photographers in a 20-meter.
All trying to line up
trying to line up and get that shot. Don't enjoy that. I still do it. At least I say once a year, once every 2 years maybe, but certainly I still do it because it's something about it. But anyway, what I do enjoy is going out with 1, 2, 3 mates and going for a walk with our gear, having a laugh. It becomes a bit of an adventure. It becomes a bit of fun. But the joy is if you go with other photographers and they are mates, you all just go, all of a sudden you click and you go, we're in photography mode now, and you'll disperse.
Don't talk to me, I'm busy.
I'm busy, yeah. And every now and again, we all good mates, and you're standing in my shot, get your ass out of my shot. I can see your ass in my shot. Move over 1 meter to the left, please, because you're in my shot. And we all go, oh, sorry, mate. And it's all fun and games. And that's, do you know what? I love that. I absolutely love that. I love a good walk, a good hike with some mates, with the gear, take some pictures. And that makes, what could be a failed photography trip into a great little adventure and a great bit of fun.
And you go and have breakfast afterwards or a coffee or whatever.
Exactly, yeah. Have a natter and have a whinge at each other about why it was so crap. but then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Exactly. So you talked about Corfe Castle being one of your favourite spots. Obviously, there's a plethora of places on that south coast. I'm going to exclude Dorset from your shooting here. What would be your favourite outside Dorset?
Outside Dorset.
Yeah.
Oh. I haven't. I do. There are many international locations, yeah, which are beautiful. And like I say, I was very lucky to go to Iceland last year. That was amazing. But if I'm talking about the UK and favourite other locations in the UK, the North Devon coast is something different. It hits a different note to me. It feels familiar because it's not that far from here, but it feels familiar. But at the same time, it's completely different. It's actually, there's an area of the North Devon coast that goes onto the Atlantic, so it's quite raw there. It gets battered, absolutely battered, you know. And some of the rock structures and the formations there are just otherworldly. Literally, just look amazing. And it's a treasure trove, I think, that North Devon coast. The thing about the North Devon coast is it's a sunset spot because just the position of it, it works well at sunset. Works a lot less well.
Yeah, lot tougher to find a good one there in sunrise.
Yeah, the position of the sun. Yeah, you can get a good shot. Don't get me wrong. And in the summer, you can actually get a really good sunrise shot. But the majority of the time, you're shooting west into the sunset, and so you are a bit more limited, and you will always have people around you. But it's remote enough that you never have. It's not like Dorset. You never get the crowds that you get in Dorset on the coast. It is such a beautiful, rugged bit of coastline. And one I'm very overdue a visit to, actually. I went there regularly 2 or 3 times a year. Now I'm down to, well, I haven't been there for 2 years now because pandemic and work. But I'm well overdue a visit to the North Devon coast. So there's 2 particular places in the North Devon coast which I always make a point of visiting. Number one is called Heartland. It's a peninsula on the North Devon coast, which is just beautiful. And there's another one called Black Church Rock.
Okay.
Which is this beautiful, humongous triangular rock with 2 holes in the middle. And until you get there, you don't quite appreciate the size of it. You see it on the photos, and you go, oh, that's a nice looking pointy rock. And then you get there and you realize that you could literally stand 3 of me at almost 180. You stand 3 of me in the hole inside it. It must be 15 meters high, 16 meters high.
Wow.
This thing, it's huge. It's humongous. It's really cool.
Fantastic.
I think UK wise, I think that's good.
That'll do. Thank you.
Yeah, I should make there's definitely a soft spot though. I definitely have a soft spot for Snowdonia. I never get good shots in Snowdonia. But I keep going back.
Yeah.
So I obviously enjoy it, but I think that's less for the photography, more for the adventure.
Yeah, interesting. I won't say I got amazing shots in Snowdonia. I got a couple which I thought were okay. I was there last year. What fascinated me more, though, was places like Denoric, the old slate quarry and whatever. It's just an absolutely incredible formed landscape. It's not man-made, though there are man-made parts of it, but it's just been shaped by man over a couple of 100 years, and it's just an incredible location to head to, I think.
Absolutely, and that quarry, you can lose yourself there for a number of days, literally. And I think when you see the pictures of that quarry online, you go, "Oh, that's pretty." It's not until you get there you realize the scale.
That's incredible.
It's huge. It is massive, and you can be standing.
I mean, just the climb up. If you don't drive around the back up through Denoric itself, the little village, but yeah, that climb up from down at the bottom there.
It's great. It's a great experience, and that's why that I think for me, Snowdonia is always worth it. It's always worth a mention because there is something about it. It is such an amazing landscape, but I really struggle there. I really struggle, and it is one of those places that you've got to get lucky with the weather because last time we went, it was grim. It was utterly grim. We were there for 3 days, and for 2 of those days, it just rained. It just rained and it rained and it rained.
Yeah, it is wild.
And it blew and it blew. It was not good photography conditions. And we were at the quarry actually on one of those days. And that was the best place to be, because at least then you had that sort of that wet black slate,
black stone,
which was the best we could do. We then made the mistake of trying to go up Snowdonia, or halfway up Snowdonia the next day, and it was just grim. We just turned around in the end and we got about 3/4 of the way up and just went, there's no point. Might as well just turn around and head back.
Better off in the pub having a pint.
Absolutely.
So that sounds like a fairly memorable experience. What other memorable experiences have you had out shooting?
Yeah, so Snowdonia is always a good one. Been there a few times with mates. I think the first time I went there, I have a very memorable experience the first time I visited Snowdonia, just because it was in spring, not far off. It must have been the beginning of June. It must have been either very late May or very early June. And we only had 2 nights there. So we drove up one day, we got to our Airbnb, we stopped, and the next morning we got up at 3 o'clock in the morning or something like that. And I still remember to this day, we started at 3 o'clock in the morning and we just went and we just drove and we shot and we walked and we shot and we walked and all the way through until well after sunset, because the conditions were quite nice that day. And I still remember literally at one point getting to a car park and just going, I'm knackered. I just closed my eyes just for 1 second and that was it. And I had to be woken up because it was that tiring. It was just a great experience. 3 mates in a van, bombing around Snowdonia, shooting and walking, trying to cram as much into a single day as physically possible.
Fantastic.
I think we saw 8 locations that day. Just brilliant fun. So like I say, Snowdonia's got some real good memories.
Fantastic.
But if the single most memorable moment of my photography life now, though, is without a doubt my trip to Iceland last year. It was everything I wanted it to be. We went in the summer, so we weren't there for Northern Lights or big snow scenes or anything like that. We were there for one reason and one reason alone, which was to get to the Icelandic Highlands. Because, they're only available for 3. Well, unless you're in some monster truck, they're only available for 2 or 3 months of the year. You'll be able to go into the center of the island and see things that you just don't get to see otherwise. When I was there with another OM system ambassador, we hired a 4x4 camper van for a week, and we just drove around the whole island, just enjoying ourselves. It was just 2 blokes in a van driving around an island, not in any way, shape or form keeping up with any sort of useful personal hygiene or eating properly or anything. We just drove and shot for a week around Iceland, and it was phenomenal. I was exhausted by the time. It was funny actually, because it's one of the few times I took some time off my day job to go shooting.
Yeah.
And everyone's, you get back to the day job and say, "Oh, did you have a nice holiday?" And it's exhausted. There was no rest involved. There was no luxury involved. I think when people see pictures of Iceland, they all have that view of the Blue Lagoon spa where everyone just wanders around in bikinis and Speedos and enjoying themselves, getting pampered and drinking cocktails. And literally, we were just 2 middle-aged blokes in a van, driving around, grubby, damp, wet and horrible. It was, by the end, I dread to think the poor people that had to clean that van at the end, because it was slightly musky. We so much, and my eyes are still. I look back at the pictures and I look at the pictures and go, even though some of the pictures aren't amazing, what my eyes saw in that 1 week, amazing. Going from glaciers to hot springs to rugged coastal areas up into the hiking areas where you have these mountains that almost look zebra-like because they've got strips of snow on them still. Phenomenal.
Fantastic. Well, what about horror stories? Everyone has them.
Snowdonia one where it just rained for 2 days. Well, that was pretty horrific. I think I've been fairly lucky with my photography. I haven't had many real bad ones. It's usually involved kit failures of some description, and usually my own fault in some way. I still remember my wife's German, and so we travel to Germany every now and again. And there's a beautiful castle. It's about 2.5 hours from my wife's family in Germany, called Burg Eltz, which is this real sort of traditional German castle. It's down in a valley, surrounded by hills. You look at it, wow, that's so spooky almost, but at the same time, just beautiful. And I was going there, and I was thinking, I'm going to go there and get some amazing shots. And I remember getting there, and the weather being a bit. Then all of a sudden, the sun came out. It's like, right, okay, there's some light now, but then it got really harsh, and I was scrabbling, and I remember knocking my tripod over, and just seeing it go forward, hit the ground. It was on a tarmac road, actually, because it's shooting, and literally just seeing my glass filters just hit the ground.
Yeah, that sickening crunching.
Just to explode across the ground, and I just thinking, how many hundreds of pounds have I just lost in that? I think I lost a graduated filter, an ND filter, and a polarizer. That full swoop, and it was just like. And I was in Germany. I was visiting family, so that was it. They were gone for the trip, which luckily I did. It was, you make it, don't you? But it was just that moment of watching, that slow motion moment of watching the tripod go, and you think, oh, this is going bad. I've got to say though, apart from filters, I've been very lucky. I haven't smashed any lenses. All my lenses have been rock solid. I do remember once shooting on the coast. And although all my kit is really well weather sealed, and I've got hats off to OM System and Olympus, their weather sealing is top notch.
Yeah, I've seen someone take it under a shower. We have showers here where you can wash the salt water off you just about every beach, and I've seen somebody actually rinse their camera off.
Oh, I do it regularly. I do that regularly, because if it has got some sand on it or something like that, if you get one of those, because we have them along the front of the beach in Bournemouth here, just literally stick it under the shower and just let it rinse it off, rinse the sand off. I'd much prefer to have a clean water rinsed camera than a salty sandy camera any day.
Absolutely.
And never had any issues. The only thing was though that this was with a very early Olympus I had, which wasn't actually technically weather sealed. It was very good, but it wasn't technically. It was never marketed as being weather sealed.
Sure.
But I had it mounted in portrait mode on an L bracket on my tripod, and I remember this wave coming towards me, and thinking, "That's a big wave. That's going to end badly." No time to move. So you just got to. So I just literally turned around and just let it hit the back of me, and just got absolutely drenched. That was it. I turned back to my camera, and I realized as I've turned away, I must have pulled the cable release plug out of the camera.
Yep.
And salt water basically has gone down into that port, and then it's literally the whole camera just went no. Salt water's obviously gone down into this port because it's mounted and the port's on the top, and because it's mounted in portrait mode, I've just watched the sort of water dribble down into it, and then within minutes the back buttons all started failing. It was the circuit board.
I've killed my Canon 6D Mark II twice that same way.
Salt water and cameras. But I've got to say that was the entry level Olympus camera. I now have the top end gear. I have their flagship cameras. I've had the past 3 flagship cameras, and they have been literally dropped on beaches, coated in sand, and then, like you say, stick them under the shower, wash it all off. As long as the ports are closed and everything, don't even worry about it. So weather sealing cannot be high enough on a seascape photographer's shopping list, I think. You need image quality, but man, you need that weather sealing on the sea. On the coast.
Absolutely. So I guess one of the things I'm interested in is your process for actually creating and That sort of starts before you actually end up on a shoot, and the thinking about where you're going to go and what the conditions are like and all that sort of thing, which we've talked a little bit about. But when you then turn up on site, what is it that you're looking for? Because obviously you can have a concept and things like, yeah, okay, Dirtle Door, you know where you got to stand to get that sun coming up through the arch. But aside from that, there's that rock that you find. What is it about that rock, and how do you find it? What is it that you're scanning the landscape for before you actually decide to set up and start shooting?
Obviously, I'm sure every single person that you've spoken to over the years has the same sort of, from a landscape point of view, the things we always look for. We always look for the weather. We all scour the weather apps, and you know, I've never met anybody that only uses one weather app. I think on average, it's got to be at least 3, if not more. And you sort of, and then you average it between the 3 and hope that you've got your averages. This one,
and I've got 2 that do the cloud forecast, but
absolutely, and they're never the same.
Yeah, no, I think cloud forecasting is a myth.
Yeah, exactly. They're never the same, are they?
Never.
I've done all my balancing of my weather apps, and I've gone, okay, so then we're down to probability. So the probability is that it is more probable than less probable that the weather will be good. Okay, let's go. So off I go. So location, generally I'm looking for a coastal, assuming that it's a coastal shoot, which is 9 out of 10 times. I'm looking for a coastal location. I'm looking for, I'm making sure the sun position's right for it as well, to make sure the sun's further enough around to at least I know there's going to be some light coming into the area that I'm going to be shooting. Then for me, there's often a time factor as well, because I do have to balance quite often leaving work, driving to a location, walking to a location, being there in time, at least an hour, 45 minutes before sunset, so I'm still going to get some golden hour light, and knowing that I could stay for this amount of time after sunset, then do the walk back, then do the drive back, etc. So all of that's going around my head with the weather conditions in the location. But once I get to the location, I generally do 2 things. Number 1, I get the camera out very quickly and I take a few shots. Almost like I don't really care what those shots, I'll never use them. I will never, ever use them. But I get the camera out and I take a few shots, just because going through that process of getting the camera set up and taking the first couple of shots, it almost relaxes me. It always says, okay, now I'm ready to take some photography, and now I'm ready to do photography.
Yeah.
Because I used to get to it and I'd be wandering around looking for the right bit, and then I'd get the camera out, and then it wouldn't be right. And I found that if I went through that process, I came away almost with less good stuff. I like just to get the camera out, take the shots, assess the light, assess the conditions, the sea, often with the sea as well, how much swells there, how feisty is it, and all the rest of it. I just take a couple of shots, just a couple of shots, 10 shots or something, just to assess the conditions. Then it's the hunt. Then you'll often find me with all my gear set up, stood next to me, and I'm just standing there staring. Because what I'm looking at is I'm staring at the waves and watching the waves come in, just watching them flow in across the rocks over and over again. Because, and you know as well as I do, Grant, it almost comes in
sets,
sets, doesn't it? Yeah, exactly. You know that you're going to get that little bit of slack, and then all of a sudden you're going to get 2 or 3 really big ones, and you sit there and you watch it. And I go through that quite a lot, actually, just standing with my camera. And then I start the rock hopping process, that's the point of then leaping from rock to rock, trying to find the right angle on a set of rocks or into the distance. Because like I did say, I am trying to be a little bit more, I'm trying to use that closer crop now, that's a slightly longer lens and slightly closer crop. So quite often I'm just trying to position myself to that subject that's off in the distance a little bit, just to get a good angle where I can get the light falling the right way. But an awful lot of my shots, and I just glanced to my side to look at my Instagram sort of feed, and it is quite scary actually. An awful lot of my shots end up with a bit of sky, a subject, and then a lot of the sea, actually. Because actually, that's what I love. I love a subject that's over there. I do love to see the motion of the ocean. I love to see the movement and everything. So, yeah, there's a lot to be said about sitting and watching the ocean, because you'd be amazed at the amount. Well, you won't be amazed, but some people will be amazed the amount of shapes that the waves and the shoreline can create for you. Depending on your shutter speed, again, you can craft shapes watching those waves come in. And especially when you get sort of two waves slowly merging into each other. When you slow the shutter down, just to sort of 1 second or half second to 1.5 seconds, you can get some beautiful lines that create. And then that can transform what is a relatively flat scene in front of you into something that has an awful lot of shape and definition, which is really exciting.
Yeah. So you've got the shot. Are you straight back home into editing, or are you one to leave it and let it rest for a while and you'll come back to it later?
I'm 50-50. So my process has changed quite a lot over the years. If I'm on a, inverted commas, big shoot, then more often than not, I'll let them sit. I'll let them sit and wait. If it's more of a ad hoc shoot, as in I've been out with the dog in the morning, I actually edit those a lot quicker. I think mainly because they're a bit more ad hoc, they're a bit more, I almost want to remember the moment a bit more, because it's just another dog walk. It is just another dog in the morning, and all of a sudden it's been amazing conditions. So what I'll even do then, I'll actually transfer the raw files from my camera to my phone and have them uploaded to my Lightroom before I even get home.
Wow. Okay.
So as I'm driving home, my camera is downloading, literally as I'm walking back to the car, I'll download them from my camera onto my phone.
And
then I'll import them into Lightroom on my phone. And then by the time I get home, they've all uploaded. And I can have a quick scan through at home and go, oh, I like this one, I like this one, I like this one. But that usually is just the sort of, what's the right word? It's the culling process.
Yeah,
triage, exactly. Yeah. I'll go through and just go, I've taken these 50 shots or 20 shots or 10 shots, whatever it might be. I've uploaded them. Now I'm going to sift through those quickly in my Lightroom, because sifting through on a phone is not quite.
Yeah, it doesn't cut it.
Yeah. So I like to sift through them on the big screen if I can. But then it's almost like if there is a particularly good one in there, then I will probably let that sit. I don't mean a long time. Don't get me wrong. I'm like every photographer. Every now and again, I'll go back through old stuff and have a look through and go, I missed that one first time around. Oh, good. And that's the fun of it, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But I generally try and edit within a couple of days. Because otherwise I like to remember the moment. It'd be still fresh in my mind. So although I suppose this time of the year, especially in the UK with the weather being like it is at the moment, I do find myself going through an awful lot of older stuff and pining for better conditions.
How did you learn your processing? Is that something that you taught yourself through YouTube or other things, or did you go through any formal education at all?
All self-taught, and actually I would say an awful lot through trial and error. Awful lot through trial and error. There's definitely some YouTubing and the like.
Yeah, how do I do that?
Yeah,
I know what I do, but I'm not sure.
I know what I want to do, but I don't know how to do it exactly. Yeah, so a particular technique or a particular thing, but the majority of it is through trial and error. And actually, I think we all probably have done it at times. You look back at some of your early work and you're a bit heavy-handed there. It's a bit overdone there. And your editing style changes, and the tweaks that you add to things. I think also the depth at which you edit can change as well. You're doing global changes to an image just to bring it all up a little bit and apply a raw profile or something like that as a starting point, and that's it, and you're done. But then as you progress, you think about the local adjustments into particular areas. I also find, you mentioned it earlier about having to clone people out. I find I'm doing that more and more these days to clean up a photo, which I suppose you could argue is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know, but it is what happens.
I have a problem with it.
No, I don't either, but I'm finding an awful lot more so, even just on the coast. I'm taking pictures of the sea, and there's little pebbles in there, and it just draws my eye to it. I was like, no, it's got to go. It's got to go. I took a picture not long ago at sunrise on Boscombe Beach, just down the road from me, and there's quite a lot of stones on the beach now, just small sort of pebbly stones in with a nice soft sand. And I looked at the image and I was like, there's just so many blinking stones here. And I ended up, it was one of those days, I don't know what was up with me, but I was obviously on one. And I ended up spending probably 20, 30 minutes just blipping out stones, just because I sort of got into the mood of doing it. I don't know, but ended up with a much cleaner image, and I was very happy with it.
Yeah, sure.
So I think, yeah, so I'm self-taught. A lot of it's through trial and error, and it continually changes. There are certain things which I always use. So I don't use Lightroom Classic very much anymore. I actually use the Lightroom CC an awful lot now, just because of my workflow seems to work well with it, because of the uploading from my phone, which uploads it to Adobe Cloud, which then sticks it into Lightroom CC for me immediately without any faffing. And then my general workflow is get it onto the PC, generally through uploading from my phone on the go. Once it's on the PC, triage, culling, get rid of all the dross. Then I'll do a first edit in Lightroom. I usually then end up exporting it to Photoshop to do further tweaks. Historically, that would be a lot of cleaning up. Although I've got to say, the latest Lightroom updates for healing is just fantastic. It's almost, not quite, but almost to the level of Photoshop now.
Yeah, they've come.
They have, yeah. But then I do still rely on a few plugins, which I always go back to in Photoshop, which I do. I like launching them from Photoshop. Maybe I like having the layers and all the control that I have access to in Photoshop. It just works, doesn't it? And I think because of my astro work, I learned a bit of Photoshop quite early in my career or in my life as a photographer, because you couldn't really do proper astro editing just relying on Lightroom. You needed Photoshop as well with blending and all the rest of it. So I think that's what kind of took me that direction a little bit more. My understanding of layers and how to use them in Photoshop now, I do utilize them an awful lot. And that comes back to the techie. I enjoy it. Without a doubt, I can't enjoy the editing process. It can be a ball ache at times, but when I'm on it, I can lose an hour to a single photo, no problem whatsoever. But I'll enjoy it. Generally, I'll enjoy that hour because I'll be in the zone, and that's it. I'm there. And yeah, I still do use a couple of plugins in Photoshop, which I do love. There's the DxO, what they were originally called. They were called something else originally. Set of plugins in Photoshop, and then there's the Topaz Labs ones as well. They're phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. The Topaz Labs sharpening and denoising. I haven't found anything else to that quality. They are cost £100 one-off, but it's a one-off cost.
That's it.
And you can literally recover a lost shot from using those two. So for me, they're worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you ever hit a creative wall? And if so, how did you handle
it? Yeah, all the time. It's continual. And I have creative walls that last a month. I have creative walls that last 3 months. I have creative walls that last a day. I just hit them. I think, like I said, I'm very critical of my work, and I do walls quite regularly. I'm not gonna lie, I'm in a bit of one at the moment, and hence why I'm focusing on the printing side. That's how I handle it generally. I do something new.
Yep.
It doesn't. It's still related, but I do something new. It might be try a new technique or something. But at the moment, I'm like, right, I'm a bit of a creative wall, but it's a bit crap as well. So let's almost forget about it. Let's just go. Except I'm there now at the moment. I need to do something different. So let's focus on the exhibition, let's focus on doing some printing and learning that piece of the craft as well. And then I'll come back to the photography once the weather picks up a bit in a month's time. I think we all hit that creative wall at some point. Going somewhere different is always a good way to release it as well. Just going to a new location and just going, okay, I'm just going to take some shots here. Although I would add, I did once try that, and the weather was so bloody awful that actually it just made me even more grumpy. And to try something different. So in the main, I try to do something linked to photography. It might be try some new editing, some different type of editing. Like I say, the moment with the printing, or go to a new location. Just try something different, and then come back to my main craft. And I usually find that works enough for me. It releases it and unplugs it. Just depends how long that takes.
You decided to start doing your own printing. What drove that decision? Were you printing much work through external labs before, or you didn't do much printing and you just decided to do that as a way of getting around a creative block, for example?
Well, it's a bit of everything. So I did do a lot of printing at the beginning of my sort of photography career. People go, "Oh, can we buy a print?" And I go, "Yeah, absolutely, you can buy a print. Of course you can." And then I'd send it off to a lab, and I'd get something back, and I'd be like, "Oh, that paper's crap," or "It's a bit too dark. Not so happy with that. Oh no, look at that! I've left that in. Oh, I should have edited that differently.
Yeah, should have sorted that out." Yeah.
And then you're in that space where, for me, it was the delay. I want the instantaneousness of it. So I would be sending something to a lab, then so you send it to the lab. It's a relatively seamless thing these days, isn't it? You upload it online and off it goes.
A few days later, you
how
get
many things you want
in the mail. Yeah.
But it was a few days, and that used to wind me up. Secondly, I ended up, it was very ad hoc as well, and people saying, "Oh, I want a print here," and then you end up paying for postage all the time.
Yeah, yep.
And it was just it wasn't an enjoyable process for me. And I actually found that I stopped selling prints because I wasn't enjoying the process.
Yeah.
So when people said, "Do you sell prints?" I was like, "No, not at the moment." I just wasn't enjoying the process. It felt like a chore, a real chore.
Yeah.
So a bit of a creative block. I talked about it for on and off for ages, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to do it now, and I've really enjoyed it actually. I haven't invested heavily. I've invested a fair amount. It's not a cheap printer, but it's with a set of ink, which doesn't last that long. It's about 120 quid, I think.
It's more the consumables than the printer outlay.
Paper, you can spend an absolute fortune on paper if you want, and don't get me wrong, I literally could.
I do wonder if there's gold in some of those reams.
Exactly, those sheets. It's 25 sheets for £150. You're thinking, hold on, but then actually, if you actually exactly, but then actually, when you go through the process and you think, hold on, yeah, or let's say it's £100 for 20 sheets, or 25 sheets, and you go, okay, so that's £4 a sheet, okay, but actually, the quality of that paper is phenomenal.
Yeah,
and I am printing it for a customer who's going to pay a lot more than £4 for it because they're paying for the process. So actually, £4 for a quality piece of paper compared to £1 for a bit of paper, then that's a good thing, because then I will be giving somebody something that I'm really happy. Yeah, and that's the sort of position I'm in at the moment. So I've had my printer now for a couple of months. I haven't actually relaunched my print sales yet because I'm still tinkering, I'm still playing. My house is now covered with various prints all over the place because I've been doing lots of test prints.
Sure.
But I'm enjoying it. I'm really enjoying it, and seeing the difference that a paper can make. And also, since I have calibrated my screens, going through that process and seeing the difference that my screens, so my photos look on my screens now, it's so much better. Should add, I am slightly different to the norm, because I know an awful lot of photographers are very much embedded in the Apple world. I'm very much embedded not in the Apple world. I don't have anything Apple. I have Android phones, I have PCs, and I almost like being the underdog. Actually, I quite enjoy it, but there's no difference. In reality, there's no difference, apart from maybe £1,000.
That's exactly it. That's it. You're paying for how shiny it is.
Don't get me wrong, they do look nice.
They do. They do. What do you see as the future of photography?
It's funny, I was having a chat with a bloke at work about this not so long ago. We were talking about, will it get to the point where actually you've got an AI algorithm that literally you can stand there and film. So essentially you're taking X many frames a second or whatever. And then the AI will actually just pick the best one for you and present you with, oh, these are the best images. It's happening already. We know that you can already do burst shots and then pour them into Google and say, show me the best one of these bursts. And it'll go, yep, this is your best burst. This is the best image, the most sharpest image. And it will give you a 10 or whatever, the right thing. And I do think there's going to be an element where that's just going to get more and more. So that technology side, the algorithmic and AI side of providing you with the best image, I think will get more and more. I mean, I see the pure AI photos and AI art that's being generated now, which is scary. I've got no issue with the using AI or clever algorithms to do the triaging and go through. If I've taken 50 shots, or if I'm a wildlife photographer and I've just burst shots at a bird in flight and I've just taken 500 shots, if I can press a button and it'll go through and it'll find me the best ones, reliably every single time. Yeah, I've got no issue with that. No issue with that whatsoever. When AI starts taking over and trying to actually generate an image from scratch, that's a little bit different. That's really quite strange.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping the human interaction element of photography will be required for many years to come. And I think
I can't see that ever dropping away until human use of cameras stops, but I can't see that. But I mean, I admire some of what you can do if you're quite clever with your prompts. But again, to me, other than being clever with your prompts, and okay, you could take that out and play with it in Photoshop and enhance it and add or change or whatever and edit it to your heart's content, or you could just take the output. But to me, that raw output of an AI script is, I struggle to call it art.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
For me, it's more, I guess it's still a bit of a plaything and a bit of a toy at the moment. It's still, and it's not well understood how it could or couldn't be used. Though I could see people in the marketing industry sort of sidelining product photographers or portrait photographers or fashion photographers, for example. But yeah, I don't see it eating too much into the landscape photography realm per se, unless there's duplicitous people that are passing AI generated images off as photography, which you've seen a little bit of in Instagram and Twitter and whatever, if you've been around social media for the past sort of 6 months or so.
Absolutely, it does raise moral questions, but also, for me, I would, if I consider myself an artist, which I struggle to, if I'm being brutally honest. I'm trying to, but I still struggle to.
Yeah.
That is an all-encompassing process from start to finish, from the planning to the trip to the editing to the output. And ultimately, if you do print, the print as well, but at least to the output on screen. That's a whole process. And that in itself, you can't replace that with AI. You can't replace the stress busting experience of going for a walk.
I would much rather pay an airfare and go to Iceland than type a few words into a keyboard and say, oh, I couldn't be bothered going to Iceland because I can get that lovely image of Vesterhorn, for example, by typing in show me Vesterhorn, you know.
Yeah. It is a stunning location. And you need to experience it. You know, you need to stand in front of it and just go, wow.
The experience of standing there, being there. And it's also one of the reasons I was actually talking to Jordan Ingley a short while ago about this. And I probably can't see myself ever buying a drone simply because I might do it from a commercial standpoint for commercial work. But for my artistic work, me standing in that point with a camera right in front of me has a real connection mentally for me. This thing flying around over here that I'm looking at through a controller or a phone or whatever, I can never be there unless I hire a helicopter or whatever. Which
you raise an interesting
point. That disconnection is a struggle for me that I probably can't get over. And I love drone photography. I love the look of it, etc. And all power to people that do it, because I admire their piloting skill. I admire their photographic compositional skills, etc. But again, they're not there, and so that disconnection still exists in my mind.
Absolutely. And like I said about my drone photography, you know, I don't do an awful lot of drone photography. I love taking the videos. That's a bit interesting. But actually, the images I get from are a few and far between that I'm really happy with. I much prefer my camera images. I do. And maybe I'd never even put it in that way before. But yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe it is that disconnect. I do have I went to Corfe Castle on a misty morning, as I do regularly, not so long ago, and I had my drone with me and I had my camera. And it's the first time, though, that I've ever had both a drone shot and a camera shot that I've been really happy with in the same day. Because the other thing I do find with the drone is you put the drone up, you've got to concentrate on the drone. You're flying
you can't just leave
a device.
Forget.
You can't. I mean, you can just leave it there and hover, but at the same time, if you do have to concentrate on it. Every now and again, you put it up and you leave it there, and then you look down in your camera and take a picture of the camera and you back up. But I find if I'm in that mode, I'm taking 2 bad shots rather than taking 1 good shot.
Because you're compromising your concentration.
Exactly, 100%. So I like to either fly the drone or I like to take pictures. So what I often end up doing is sort of, if I do have the drone with me, I will break it into maybe a 20-minute thing. 20 minutes I'll focus on the camera, 20 minutes I'll fly the drone, 20 minutes I'll focus on the camera. Obviously on a sunrise, at best you've got 2 20-minute windows on each at best. Yeah, it is a hell of a balance. And I have found actually a couple of times taking only the drone out with, because just to leave the camera home, just because I know I need to focus on getting better with handling the drone. And I know if the camera's there, I won't be concentrating on the drone as much. So yeah, drones are definitely, it's a really interesting, they are a really interesting format, medium, style, device, but I still don't get the same buzz I get from getting a good picture.
Yeah. Well, are there any photographers out there that you think that I should be talking to on the podcast?
See, I think we all are aware of the big YouTube stars and all the rest of it. And they're all great, and we all watch their stuff at different times. And I must say, I'm particularly, I don't watch a huge quantity of YouTube stuff, YouTube content from photographers. Fundamentally, I don't get excited about it. I would much prefer to be on a shoot or editing my own shots, watching somebody else on a shoot or editing their own shots. And yes, okay, it's okay from a learning point. And every now and again, I dip in and I'll maybe watch 2 episodes or 3 episodes or something. And
I
then
don't mind it from a location, actual locations, maybe. Yeah.
So actually, what I love doing is making a connection with other photographers. Just like we're doing today. This is great for me. This is about talking to another photographer about photography. This is fantastic. Some of my closest, I'm going to say friends, no, they are friends, but closest acquaintances, the people that I talk to most regularly are people in other parts of the UK that are photographers on Instagram, on social media, because we have a connection. And there are some amazing photographers out there that don't have big followings or anything like that, but they just take such amazing photos, and you just go, "I doff my hat to you, sir." So there are many awesome photographers on Instagram, and many people I'm lucky enough to call my friends. There are a couple that I would wholeheartedly recommend, just because I think their work is always different. So there's a chap called Martin23. I don't know if you've come across him. He is a minimalist photographer. He does long exposure minimalist stuff. His stuff is amazing. It is fantastic. He nails it every time. If you want to see somebody that doesn't just take standard landscape stuff, does a bit more of the minimalist long exposure stuff, and he freely admits he edits heavy as well, but the outputs are always fantastic. Always fantastic. And then I have 2 good friends that are both Bristol based, so not far from me, but we always try and meet up a couple of times a year just to say, and I am always in awe of their work. And also, I don't think they're the biggest photographers in the UK by any means, but I think they're always worth a look. So there's a chap called Sam Binding. Sam Binding, he's a really good chap from Bristol. And then there's a chap called Dr. John Rees, who's actually, like myself, he's got a full-time job. He's a doctor, surprisingly. That's what he's called, Dr. John Rees. He's a full-time doctor, and he does photography very similar to me, as a bit of a sideline, a bit of a release. And he's one of those people who's got an eye for it. Without a doubt, he is one of those people that can point the camera and it just takes a good photo.
Fantastic.
but yeah, so I think if you spoke to any one of those 3, I think that'd be really
brilliant. I've got them on the list. Thank you for that. I've got one more question, and if you've listened before, you probably know what's coming, and everyone else knows what's coming. It's a very important issue that a lot of photographers want to get to the bottom of. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
No, hate it.
Okay.
Absolutely hate it. I think fruit should remain in a fruit bowl, not on a pizza. That is my opinion. I think that's just the case of, to be honest, I'm a very traditional pizza eater, and I would gladly have just meat on the pizza, actually. Meat, cheese, tomato, and meat. And I'll be very
fair enough.
As long as there's some spicy sauce as well.
Oh, yeah. That goes without saying. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today, Tom. It's been absolutely wonderful getting to know you and your work a little bit better. Where can people find your work?
Okay, my main home is Instagram. So I'm Tom Ormerod on Instagram. And I also have tomormerod.com, my website. And between those 2, that's where I share the majority of my work. This is a Facebook page as well. There's a Vero page, and there's a 500 pics page, and all those other side things as well. But reality is, I'm still an Instagrammer at the heart with my website, and those are my two main outlets. So nice and easy. Basically, if you search for Tom Ormerod photography or anything like that, I'm pretty unique, as in it's a pretty unique name.
There's not many of you around.
Not many of you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Tom.
Cheers, Grant. It's good to speak to you.
Great. Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show. Keep listening, because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com. I'm also on Vero, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.